Hey guys, and welcome to episode 24 of All the Mods 10. I happened to get a little bit busy between episodes here and got carried away building. Excuse me. This was kind of the plan originally, and I was hoping to have multiple beams go across, but then the cave kind of looks nice, and I'm a little bit torn, so I don't know what I'm going to do further, but I know what I'm doing this episode, and that is tackling the EBF. So, to continue on the grind from the previous episode, let's just start requesting things. Just find out where I'm missing stuff. I'm missing copper nickel wire, which is made, hopefully somehow, using copper nickel plates in a wire mill. And copper nickel plates are from copper nickel ingots, and then the ingots are made with the alloy, and the alloy is a crushed, oh, it's a mixer between nickel and iron. That checks out. And all of those recipes have now been put in place. So let's try this again, shall we? And it's just going. Cool. What I'm missing here is a blast furnace, which I can make 2 at a time using the steel recipe. So I should probably just encode that as a pattern as well. Is I foresee myself needing quite a significant amount of EBFs soon. While these are crafting up, let's look at the other parts. To make this multi-block, you need 16 copper nickel coils and 17 heatproof casings. So copper nickel coils are just copper nickel wire, which is another recipe that I'd have to encode, but one that I can now make, fortunately. And then the last thing I need is the heatproof casing. And the heatproof casing is just Inwar, which I have automated in the form of ingots. Just need a plate recipe for that. This should be done soon. Copper nickel cable, check. Heatproof machine casing, check. Inwar plates, check. Coil blocks, check. Items requested. Materials ready. Now we just wait. It is just that simple now. And if you give me a second to prep up this area, I'm gonna set these furnaces up using a new trick called wall sharing, which means they're gonna share adjacent walls to save on material costs. Just let me set up the floor for them real quick. And before I unknowingly commit too much space to the EBFs, I want to know what all recipes I need. I need one for silicon. I need... Hmm. I don't need steel. I will need the chromium hot ingots to turn into chromium ingots, but is there other ways to make chromium ingots other than the hot ingots? Doesn't seem like there is. Alright, so one for silicon, one for chromium, one for Kanthal. Should I rush Kanthal to get the better furnaces? Maybe later. So that's 3 so far. And stainless steel is 4. Methane to acetylene is perhaps another in the future. Okay, so it seems like I just need the 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Maybe a 5th one for acetylene. Unless there's other ways to make acetylene, and there sure is. It's a distillery recipe or a distillation tower recipe. So, cool. 4 it is. And you know what? On second thought, given that there's other tiers out there, at the Kanthal tier, I'll probably need many more. I'm just going to commit all of this space, because why not? Before I go on and actually set this one down, I want to show off what this thing looks like. Are my heatproof casings done yet? They are. Excellent. So, this is a multi-block machine that kind of looks like this. And of course, you'll need hatches to cover up spots that you're not using, but basically you build it like so, and then the coils go on this side and all around, sort of like that. Right? And you'd build it all the way to the top and so on and so forth. When you're wall sharing EBFs, you can do this, and as you can see, this guy's left wall and this guy's right wall are the same wall. How serendipitous. That means I can save on resources and have fully functional machines. Now, it is important to note that these are then common to both sides. You can only have energy on the middle blocks here. So Yeah, that's something to keep in mind. And now that I've demonstrated my ideas, I think it's perfectly reasonable for me to start building these out here. So this would look something like this, and then fill in the bottom, then 2 layers of coil blocks, sort of like so, and then the rest getting close to it. Regular old heat-proof casings. And this is now a valid blast furnace. Now the tiers go up to Cantel, but unlike RegTech where you have so many tiers of blast furnaces, this one just has 2, fortunately. Now, holding on to a hatch of any type, be it input or output, will tell you where in the multi-block you can put them. And for me, because I'm not using any fluid recipes at the cupronickel tier, at the moment I'm just going to stick with the bronze item input and output hatches. And I'm going to be pulling the output out at the top, like so. And I'm going to be putting inputs down at the bottom, right there. And of course I'm going to do that to it and have it auto pull out. And have this auto push to the top. That is marking the top, and that is auto eject, which has now been enabled. What this setup will allow me to do is set up a subnet that spans the entire length of however long this assembly line, I guess, of furnaces happens to be. And all those subnets can eventually output into a single interface that puts all of its outputs into the system. And on the input side, I can simply just put a pattern provider down here, back it once from here, and back it once from the side to have it point upwards. And that's that done. Now I just need to hook up this pattern provider down the line, and yeah, that's my setup. Let's just speed through the rest ones, shall we? And it seems that I'm currently still not producing cupronickel coils fast enough, and that's because all of my rubber is being eaten up by crafting up these circuits. So I guess I just wait a little bit. Ain't nothing like a little bit of AFK time to heal the soul. In the meantime, I've been able to set up 2 of these blast furnaces. I'm just missing the pattern provider at the bottom here. Just do that, whack it once from the side, and I think I can just about get it out there and turn it around. Perfect. Seal it up. Now, something I don't know is if I can share the LV hatches for power right here. And I can craft everything I need right here, so why not try it? Now, these can allegedly go in the middle, so if I put this here and whack it on top for no reason, apparently it does takes inputs from all sides, are both of these still valid? This one's invalid, and this one's valid. How would this one be invalid? Is it because if it's part of this guy, it's not recognized as a part of this guy? That might be it. So if I then create a second hatch, does the problem fix itself? Well, there's only one way to find out, and that is to make another one of these hatches. And well, we find out now. There we go. Yeah. So each one of these will need their own, what is it, energy inputs as well. No problem at all. Now this is the item spine that is going to run beneath this, and this wireless connector just goes across, I believe, where is it? Up here, right? This guy right here. Because this MI setup was not exactly using all of its channels. I think it had around 12, 13 channels to spare, and I won't need more than a dozen of these machines, so might as well just extend this across to here. Now, I already have a spaghetti cable running down to these vending machines, but no harm, no foul. I just have a wireless connection going to the factory floor here. And I sincerely need to come up with a better way to get down here. Thinking another one of those hidden trapdoors would be nice. Anyways, we go smart cable and we hook it up to right here. And I can do the same right here too. Both of these should eventually come up online once the network boots up. And I think then that's everything. Well, needless to say, I totally lied. I'm yet to do the outputs, and I figured I'd show off how I intend to do the outputs. So, I want to use each EBF as its own subnet in an output chain that eventually drains all of its outputs into a single interface at the edge. So, that interface will go, I want it to go on the side here like so, hanging out, oh, wrong block. So it's hanging out over the top, and then I can just pull a single cable down back to the home computer, just like so. Now, each one of these outputs, which are currently set to auto eject out the top, get interfaces on their faces, and then I need storage buses, if I can spell this correctly, which I did. I'm proud of myself. And they would eventually end up storing into the blocks to their left. So this is a bad example because this is backwards, but this would be an interface, and both of these interfaces would receive inputs into their incoming side instead of their stocking side, and their incoming items will try to go into their connected storage, which is going to be this one, which connects into the main network storage. Cool. Now, this is going to be the setup, and of course, I need to send power to this block right here on both of these. And for that, I think this should suffice. I'll just put induction cards in both of these, and hopefully that works. Next up, I'll need to route power between the subnets, and I'm thinking a quartz fiber right here. In fact, I'll show you. Give me a second. Radio, induction card, induction card. This one will also need an induction card because it's going to be transferring power in a second. Will it be? Actually, I don't think so. This one sure as hell will be, so I'm going to leave this one. And then I just need this one to receive power from its side, which is going to be this side right here. Just made sure that this isn't connected anywhere. And then this would transmit its power into this subnet. And then this guy would transmit its power into the next subnet and the next subnet, and so on and so forth. Now, it's still valid. Does it have power? It does. Cool. I think this now is really everything. I should be able to make silicon. And of course, that means that first I have to encode the recipes at the cupronickel tier. I do not have a recipe for powdered quartz, but I imagine it's not what I expected. Oh, okay. It can be any powdered quartz. I was really confused as to why it refused to accept this one. I would like to then re-encode this recipe with the appropriate powdered quartz. I'm gonna use the kind that is for mechanism. Okay, you know what? I'll just powder my own quartz. How about that? There we are. Quartz dust from mechanism. I would like to encode that recipe instead, and the quartz dust is just crushed quartz in a crusher. So, we go crusher, which was this one right here. Please crush me some quartz. EBF. Please smelt up some silicon dust. And then the silicon dust is smelted up again, which is, hey ho, another crafting recipe, hooray! The lords have blessed us with another crafting recipe, and this one goes in the smeltery. Let's go. And I think that is finally everything. If everything is set up correctly, I should just be able to ask for a silicon ingot. Am I doing it? Is it happening? This should be crafting right now, allegedly. Head scratching, head scratching. A little bit of pondering. Says it's crafting one of these. One of these is scheduled. That means the pattern provider is trying to push into this machine, but the input hatch is not accepting anything. It's just one quartz dust. How rather annoying. Oh, and I think I know why. It's because I'm using the bronze input hatches, and they only have a single block input. Of course. Of course that's the case. If this can only accept one item in here, how can I put two items in here if there's gonna be two items in the recipe? What was I even thinking? So I've gone ahead and made myself a steel input hatch, and let's try this again, shall we? See, that one now has two inputs. If I close this back up, now that this thing's buttoned back up, this is now running. It takes about 10 seconds or so, if memory serves me right. But then my silicon will be done. Whoa, ho, ho, would you look at that? My first ever silicon ingot. Time to craft and request 1,000. And with 10 silicon auto-crafted, I can focus on getting my diodes and stuff, which, unfortunately for you guys, is not the most exceptional of content. For me, it's just clicking a bunch of recipes into these pattern providers behind me and around me. For you guys, it's going to be a jump cut. And with all those recipes in place, I should be able to request 8, 16, 24, 32, 40, 42, 46 overdrive modules. Yeah. Well, almost everything is available except the silicon. And the silicon shouldn't take too long because the first overdrive module I get, I'm going to put in here. So, just a little bit of waiting game for me while I watch my TV show. I'm on season 5 of The Mentalist now. Yeah, the story keeps unfolding and keeps getting better and better. Good TV show, you should watch it. Hey, they're finally starting to come in. And there's a few more on the way. I've already put overdrive modules in here, and so its efficiency is at max. Look at this thing go. So fast. And also this one. And that one, that one, that one. I've actually put in overdrive modules all the way up to about here. You just saw me. I just wait more. Or should I wait more? Should I move on to making stainless steel? Hmm. You know, even with all of this waiting around, it's been a while in real time, but I have not a lot of content. I think I have about a third of an episode's worth of content by my approximation at the moment. So I'm currently looking for things to do, and given the fact that all of this space has been, well, for all intents and purposes, occupied, I think I'm going to move over to this side and set up more machines here. And I'm thinking I get into some stainless steel next. You know, you gotta do the titanium, the stainless steel, tungsten, all of those things. Yeah, might just do that over here. And the stainless steel crafting recipe is quite the doozy, really. I didn't expect it to be this involved, but that's quite alright. It's just a bunch of steps that some of these would have to be passive, some items and outputs would need to be trashed. And I figured I'd go through it on my own before I talk about it on camera, because, well, I didn't know what I was getting into. So, stainless steel ingots come from a vacuum freezer because that's the only thing I have access to at the moment. All of these I can hypothetically craft right now, just I haven't yet. Right. So, that comes from a stainless steel hot ingot, which comes from, well, the EBF at the copper nickel tier, which I now have, and stainless steel dust. The dust is made in a mixer by combining iron dust, nickel dust, both of these I have in large amounts, chromium dust, which I don't have, and manganese dust, which I also do not have. Thus, the two production chains out here. So let's get into chromium first, shall we? Chromium dust comes from, well, crushing down chromium stuff or packing up tiny chromium. So of course you have to make the tiny chromium, which comes from an electrolyzer. And you electrolyze chromium hydrochloric solution to get chromium tiny dust. And the solution comes from crushed chromium and hydrochloric acid. Now, crushed chromium comes from crushing or centrifuging crushed rubies. And I have ruby seeds that I have just planted back there. I hadn't yet because rubies didn't exactly have a use for the longest time. So anyways, you can just crush rubies like so, and that is easy peasy lemon squeezy. Now the hydrochloric acid comes from a chemical reactor of, or a chemical reaction of hydrogen and chlorine, and the chlorine will come from oxygen, hydrogen, and potassium chloride. I don't like that idea. So I think I'm going to go the salt route. The salt will involve me setting up mechanism machines. So it's going to be fun. And it also gives me sodium, which I'll figure out something with. Now, for the manganese, it's a similar story at the end of the day. You electrolyze the solution. In this case, it's sulfuric or manganese sulfuric solution instead of hydrochloric chromium solution. And this guy comes from a chemical reaction of the crushed with sulfuric acid. The crush comes from raw iron. Now my system currently doesn't save any raw iron. It all gets auto smelted right there. Right there. And because it's never saved, I don't know how I will manage to do this, but I think if I just put an exporter into the machine, it'll figure itself out. And that is because some of these processes take forever. For example, crushing or centrifuging crushed ruby dust takes 2 minutes of base time. I can always put in overdrive modules to speed this up, but that is a really long time. So putting these on passive and then sort of forgetting about them is how I wish to do this, and an exporter should allow me to do that. Anyways, manganese, we come down to here, and sulfuric acid then comes from, well, I would imagine some form of sulfur. Sulfur, water, and oxygen produces sulfuric acid, and this is a recipe I'd be happy to set up because fairly simple. Now, there are other recipes with light fuel and all that jazz, but, well, I'm not there yet. Where I am, however, is on the other side of the base, trying to put in the recipes for the materials required to build me the vacuum freezers. And those are the machines that are responsible for cooling down the hot ingot into the regular ingot. And because it's got a bunch of microcrafts, the large pump requires a pump and a small motor. The pump requires this large motor and the electron, blah, 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 so much glorp. Anyways, it's all done. Took me a second. And I'm just going to put it down here somewhere. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. I'll just forget about it. I'll just request vacuum freezers from now on out. And now I can come back to this side and request, hopefully, a vacuum freezer. And just let it do its thing while I set up passive production of... You know what? I'll do the rubies first. And I've run into a rather interesting problem here, and it's the fact that if this efficiency is at a certain amount, for example, currently it is at 25 of 64, and this guy has two recipes that it's doing. One is crushing antimony and the other is coke dust. If this efficiency is built up using coke dust and a piece of antimony comes in here, the machine doesn't process it. It just gets stuck. And that basically means that I've had to make a few more electric macerators that I'm gonna put here and then continue building outwards. I'm going fewer machines this time because I don't exactly know how many more I need. But of course, as I need more, I can just build more along the walls. And for now, I'm choosing 4 of them. Boop, 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 boop. And just like that, all of my stuff is now auto-crafted, including the vacuum freezer, which is a multi-block that I'll get to in a second, and the 2 centrifuges. Now, normally, I would go ahead and put in the centrifuges right here, and then stick pattern providers on them and set them to auto output. But I would like this process to be completely passive. I mean, I can still make this completely passive now that I think about it, because the centrifuge would have a boatload of crap that it outputs, for example, producing this. I really, really do not need the aluminum dust. But if I auto request this, then it will put in 6, wait 120 seconds, spit out these things, and then I can just set up a void cell for aluminum dust. Yeah, that can work. And I can pretty much do something similar for raw iron, except raw iron doesn't exist in my system. It gets auto-exported into that. I do not want to set a blacklist for that. So I think I'm going to put in an export and pull out the back for the iron. That was a pretty simple solution for both of them. Or optionally, what I can do is set up a drawer with an extremely high storage priority that only stores raw iron. And I think I'll do exactly that. That seems like a more fun idea. Just have a few stacks of raw iron chilling in here for the express purpose of putting into the centrifuge. Yeah, I'll do that. Something like this would look just fine. I would like to put it right here. And if I can even find any raw iron, well, it won't stick around any longer than it needs to. It will get instantly exported. Or if I can just find some iron laying around. Perfect. And put this on here, set it to a lock. Now, if I just slap a storage bus on here, I would expect this to be pulled out pretty much instantly. But what I would like to do here is set this to an extremely high priority, maybe like 9,000. because the drive that stores them is at 1,000. So I would also then like to make this, since this is a higher priority, it'll always get filled up first. And I would now like it to only pull out when it has a certain amount in the drawer. Can I set that up using a storage bus, I wonder? Or rather optionally, I can have this in insert only mode. And since this is at a higher priority, this will get inserted into first. And if this is an insert only, I can then have the centrifuge auto pull from the top. Something like so. And once this has stuff in it, it'll start centrifuging the iron, I imagine. Yeah, that makes sense, right? Or better yet, I can just skip this entirely and put in an insert bus. Not an insert bus, an export bus. And have that set to raw iron. Right, that should also work. And then I can have a pusher upgrade pushing into the centrifuge and pulling the whatever the outputs are out of the centrifuge. And hey ho, that seems to have worked pretty much perfectly. Now, if I put in a pusher upgrade, like so, I should now be able to right click this until I say push down, and that's now going in the centrifuge. And with iron now in its inventory, I think I can just slap down an interface here, give this guy an induction card. Once it's online, it should just start powering this up, and eventually you'll get iron dust and manganese crushed dust. Cool. For the other side now. Here I want to export ruby dust. So ruby dust goes here, and of course this one will need a crafting upgrade, because I will put a ruby crushing recipe in my system using that crusher there. I'll also put a storage downgrade in this guy, like so. Not like that. I'll have to undo this and unlock this, click that, relock it. I accidentally put the upgrade in the drawer. I want the drawer to be filled with ruby dust instead. And I will have to add a pattern for ruby dust with this guy. And once I put this here, hopefully soon, ruby dust starts coming in. And similar to this guy, I will have to add a pusher upgrade to push its contents down. Et voila, both of these are now working. This one has an overdrive, this one does not. And of course, I would like to add an overdrive module to this. I have one last overdrive remaining, put that one here, because this one takes forever. Now, I do not need more aluminum, and I do not need more iron dust. So I'm thinking I go back to this storage system right here and just steal a couple spots for the two dusts and put a white upgrade in that drawer. But it looks like all of these are occupied, so I'm having second thoughts here. Maybe I can just put it here. That makes more sense. And this storage drawer has found its home right here, connected to that drawer controller right there, which is at a high priority. And it can only store 64 items of each type. If I ever have other ingredients that I'd like to white off, but keep some for keepsakes or for decoration, I guess. I can always put them right here. Cool. Now that means that both of these centrifuges will be going full time and producing for me manganese crushed and chromium crushed. Yeah, nice. Okay, next up I want to look into production of both of these, the hydrochloric acid and the sulfuric acid. Now, if memory serves me right, this was just an electrolysis recipe for oxygen. Yeah, right here on page 2, you can take water, split it out into hydrogen and oxygen, and then use it with sulfur, water, oxygen to make sulfuric acid. Okay, that's fine. Hydrochloric acid, on the other hand, comes from chlorine, which was using salt. The electrolysis of salt gives me sodium and chlorine, and then chlorine combines with water, or hydrogen, sorry, to make hydrochloric acid. So what I'm picturing now is two electrolyzers constantly running water to produce oxygen and hydrogen, And then 2 chemical reactors constantly producing sulfuric acid on demand. And hydrochloric acid too, of course. And I feel a little bit dumb right about now because you can convert a block of silicon from extended AE into silicon ingots. And this is one of the skips that I knew existed, but I forgot about right up until right now. And given the fact that I'm currently tragically waiting on silicon pretty much all the time, I think, given the fact that I have set up the entire process for silicon, I'm now going to start using the skip from now on. So, to skip silicon using an unpacker, first, of course, you would need an electric unpacker. And fortunately for me, I have pretty much everything I need right here. So I can just request an autocraft, for which I have to wait. Actually, I lied. Here's an electric unpacker. And this guy is the key to infinite silicon. Technically, not. Pattern provider next. Slap it on the side. Tell it to output to the side, and then unpack to the right. Next up, we go to the unpacker recipe that takes a block of silicon and turns it into 9 silicon ingots. Just slap that recipe in here. And now once this is connected up into the system, this entire thing should just work. And now I would like to request a whole boatload of silicon, 1024 of it. And all of that I would like to put in a drive somewhere. And with that skip in place, all of my recipes that are using silicon will now be using this unpacker. Look at it go. Now, of course, given that this is only doing the unpacking, I would like to have this guy sped up. And of course, it just crafted its own overdrive. Here we are. And now, infinite silicon. Much faster than going through an EBF even. Coming back to electrolyzers, here's one of them. And I should just be able to request everything I need from here. And this should come in pretty quickly given the fact that it's using this guy's silicon instead of the silicon from MI. Both of these guys then get their interfaces. I've run out of interfaces. And then with interfaces, these guys get induction cards, because of course they do. Now, you might be wondering how I plan on getting water to all of these, and to that I say, eternal water block, anyone? And because I have nothing better to use at the moment, I think I'm just gonna stick with the fluid pipe, because this should be fast enough to keep up with this. And with water in place, this electrolyzer is already going. This side isn't connected yet, but I bet this side is full of hydrogen and oxygen, both from MI. So, that just tells me that next up I need to devote some space to hydrogen and oxygen. And this 256K drive can go right here. If this fills up, which it now has, we know that the electrolyzers are working. Well, one of them at least. The other one is not yet connected. But shortly, it is. And next up, 2 chemical reactors. Reactor number 1, reactor number 2. And I will apparently also need reactor numero 3. Now, this guy is the one who's actually responsible for making the hydrochloric and sulfuric acid. So I'm going to put the recipes that I accidentally was going to put in the electrolyzers right here. This also means that this guy cannot get overdrive modules, but both of these definitely will. And they will be using this recipe right here. Now, these chemical reactors will produce the tiny dust, and then the tiny dust gets combined in mixers to make tiny stainless steel dust. So the chromium tiny dust, the manganese tiny dust, the nickel tiny dust, and the iron tiny dust all come together to make stainless steel, which can then either be mixed into kanthal or be converted into the stainless steel dust, which can then be smelted into stainless steel. We are almost there. So another electrolyzer for this, an electrolyzer for that. Recipes encoded. Mixer for the tiny dust at the ready. And after all of this, I believe the last thing to do is to find a way to get chlorine. And if memory serves me right, not only do I get chlorine as a return from this process, I lose some. So to get started with it, the electrolysis of salt will go right there. Now I forgot to mention something, and that's the fact that when you try to encode this recipe, the primary output happens to be sodium. And this is when you would choose to cycle the inputs, because what I want to use this for is the chlorine. Now, is there other ways to get sodium? Probably. None of them seem as nice as this one, so I might just also encode a second recipe, which would be this version, so that if I ever request sodium, I can electrolyze salt just the same. And to wrap up the steel production, I have the stainless steel recipe encoded to make the dust, which then goes in an EBF, takes 20 seconds, and makes a hot ingot. And the only thing I can do with the hot ingot is to put it in a vacuum freezer to cool it down. Guess who was smart enough to create a vacuum freezer beforehand? This guy. And guess who forgot that I would have to recreate something like that space on this side? This guy. Also, sometimes I forget that I'm playing modded Minecraft, and that there's much easier ways to do these things. Unless you run out of resources, apparently. Okay, now that I have the space set up, similar to what I have out there, vacuum freezer time. And this is a 4-tall machine once again, and it looks like I need a bunch of frostproof casing. In fact, if I hold on to this and press right click, I know I need 33. And it's mostly used to cool down a bunch of things. But for now, all I really care about is the one. So, frostproof casings, let's find out what the recipe is. Just aluminum? Okay, I can do that. And let's just request whatever this thing was asking for. I think it's at 33. I should just pretty much instantly be able to craft all of this, outside of having to make aluminum plates before anything else. Yep, all aluminum. That's a lot of aluminum. Casings are done. And of course, since this machine extends a block below the controller, and I want the machine to be placed on these pedestals, I would have to raise the machine up by a block, and that's exactly what I've done here. And once again, I will be wall sharing these machines, so only the first one requires this much casing. In the meantime, I just need to fill in all of this. Another hollow 3x3x4 with a solid top and bottom. And once again, pretty much exactly the same way as these EBFs here, I'm gonna have a subnet on top that outputs everything into an interface, and pattern providers at the bottom. Input hatch in the bottom, and I don't think I want to have this be a pattern provider, because obviously the only thing coming into this will be hot steel, so I can just do that. All hot steel will go into this freezer, and I'll do the same for the EBF that I designate for steel production. On the top then, item output hatch, and of course I gotta give it the whack and tell it to auto output. Lastly, for the vacuum freezer at the very least, not the network above it, we give this an LV energy hatch. Now I just need to mirror what I did there over here, and I'm done. And coming back to this side, I think I want to swap this block for an exporter. One of these bad boys. Just a regular one is fine, actually. Don't need the extended one. I would like to export up into... I can place it from right here. Of course I can. I'd like to export stainless steel dust, whose recipe is right there. I'd like to export these into there. And now, if I give this a crafting card, I should now have passive steel. Hopefully. It's active. And if my requests and everything else is working properly, all of these machines should have turned on. I'm now producing sulfuric acid. Excellent. Producing a bunch of sulfuric acid, clearly. It also looks like I'm slowly electrolyzing salt to produce enough chlorine to make hydrochloric acid. And since this machine only does one recipe, I mean it's two recipes, but it's the same thing, just different outputs. I can overdrive this one. This one also has an overdrive because it's only responsible for making steel dust. This is going to take a second, but eventually we have chlorine and hydrogen, which is going to produce hydrochloric acid. And with this amount of manganese, with the sulfuric acid and the manganese, we now get crushed manganese, which goes up here and turns into manganese tiny dust. The other side's also working now, but that's the electrolyzer. I imagine this would be done soon. Whatever happened to my chlorine? Oh, it's waiting on this. This is a slow process. That's unfortunate. At the very least, the saving grace of a system as such is the fact that I get most of my most of my chlorine back. From 1,000 input, I get 450 hydrogen and 450 chlorine out. So even though this is currently processing, oh, what am I clicking at? This would have been processing hydrochloric acid. Once this is done, I will get most of my chlorine back, so this will have to run much less frequently. Oh, it turned on. It's now doing hydrochloric acid, and there's now enough acid to get the chromium solution. And that means that the chromium solution, in a second now, is going to go in here, make the chromium tiny dust. Let's go, let's go. Chromium tiny dust is now done, which means it should have been crafted into steel tiny dust in the mixer, and hey, we are now getting hot steel. It's at 50%. And eventually it should end up in here. Whoa, look at it. Stainless steel hot ingot. Oh, it's in here, but it's not powered on for whatever reason. Status active. Why would it not cool down the stainless steel then? 32 EU per second. 12.5 seconds. This has power. Oh, it's offline. Of course it's offline. I never connected it to the power. Silly me. There we go. And folks, just like that, we have steel. Not the Minecraft steel, but the modern industrialization steel. Stainless steel ingot. Let's go. Now this I want to store in a mega bulk item storage cell because this is a completely passive resource. Not that I ever expect to make enough stainless steel to fill this up. I don't even know if I can fill this up. But at the same time, it's quite the achievement and I would like to treat it as such. There we are. Completely empty with stainless steel. And all of the rods and the plates and all that jazz is also being constantly requested. Cool, cool. And of course, because that process is passive, it'll keep requesting more and more steel to be produced, which will keep putting it in here. And so far it's already done 6. And I just hope the vacuum freezer can keep up. It has also done 6, so they're both going at the same rate. And I am now, finally, into the steel age. In any case, y'all, this has been KSAW in Ultimods 10. And with stainless steel behind us, I might tackle fusion power next time. Peace out, everybody.